Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Great North Podcast, the podcast where we're talking about everything you need to know about Canadian lawn care. So, without further ado, let's get into this week's episode. All right, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome to the Great North Podcast. Welcome to the newest episode. I know it's been a while, but we're going to do our classic winter recap episode. We're going to be recapping everything from 2024, the entire lawn season, as well as talking about plans for 2025. So without further ado, let's get into it. First of all, I know we kind of had a quiet end of the year last year. As I said in the little community post I made, I do work a day job, and unfortunately my day job is seasonal as well. So the fall time is very, very busy for me, wrapping up everything in my day job for the season, as well as trying to produce content here. And as most of you know, fall is a very busy time for lawn content. So we're hoping to get some more fall content. I know this has been a downfall for my channel pretty much every year it's been around. So we're hoping to get more lawn content produced this fall. I'm trying to get back on the content train again. Unfortunately, I just kind of felt quite burnt out last year, and that didn't lead to a lot of videos being created. But now I think we're ready to hop back on it and get some new videos coming out very soon. So I'm very excited about that. We're going to be getting this podcast rolling again a little bit here in the kind of late winter, as well as we roll into the spring. We got some lawnmower reviews and equipment reviews coming up very soon. We're going to be doing some product reviews as well with GrowForge again. We're going to be doing some reviews on my irrigation system with Hunter, and we're going to be seeing how things are progressing throughout the season. So very excited for what 2025 has to bring. Happy New Year to everybody as well. And so plans for the 2025 lawn season. I don't necessarily yet have anything major planned out. I would like to I think I got better at dialing in my my irrigation this year, as well as my spoon feeding program. But I definitely want to continue that. I do got some little bit of things here and there I want to work on in the side yard, and I would like to work on in the backyard that I didn't get around to. But there wasn't much in 2025 that I found that I didn't get around to, so I'm not super concerned about that. But yeah, that's the way it always kind of works in the lawn season, obviously. So for the 2025 lawn season, we do have a couple interesting things coming up. Maybe a new lawnmower. We'll see. But definitely looking forward to that season. Looking forward to getting back out in the lawn again, working again, and plucking away at things in the back there. 5 years of Great Green North. That is right, folks. It doesn't seem like it's been. The COVID gap has created a bit of a lull in most of our memories, but this year is where Great Green North will be celebrating our 5-year anniversary as a company, as a channel, and 5 years of helping Canadian lawn care homeowners, enthusiasts, just like myself. We are proudly Canadian, located in Georgetown, Ontario. Proudly Canadian, proudly support Canadian business, and very happy to continue to support Canadian business and promote Canadian business as well. So 5 years of Great North Lawn Care. Again, like always, I just want to thank everybody for their continued support of the channel. Even through the times where the videos weren't coming out exactly on time. You guys have always been a great support team, and many great loyal viewers that are always commenting great things. So thank you guys for support. We wouldn't be able to do this without you guys, so appreciate that. Without further ado, the plan for the rest of this episode is just to look back at the 2024 lawn season, some of the obstacles we ran into, how some of the things went. As well, we're going to be talking about the test plots that are going on in the lawn, as well as a couple plans for the 2025 lawn season. So, and then we're going to be looking at the very end of the episode, we're going to be looking at our biggest successes and failures of the lawn season this year. So without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, so 2024 was actually probably a weird year due to weather, mainly. As we know, weather is always a huge deal with everything in the lawn, but we had kind of a non-winter in the winter of 2023 to 2024. We recorded, it was a record warm winter, warmest winter I can remember in my lifetime. Most days wasn't even wearing a jacket. The coldest it got, I think, was like -10, but it felt like every day was above zero. We had pretty much no snow for most of the winter, and it was just oddly warm and raining, and it was a very strange winter for one. So that kind of set us off on a very strange trajectory in the spring, because the winter was kind of so long and but not really cold, but it was this kind of like cold, not really warm enough for lawn season to start yet, but not really cold enough for anything to really go dormant. So everything just kind of sat in this iffy phase, and there was a lot of false starts in the spring where we would get a week of really warm weather up in the teens, and then everything would get really cold again, and everything would get kind of stunted, and then it would get really warm again and really cold again. So there's a lot of that in the spring of last year, and because it's one of the weirdest springs I can remember, it was just very strange, and because everything was so strange, the lawn season itself got off to a weird start. Definitely one of the earliest I've ever been mowing. I believe I did the first mow first or second week of April, when the lawn was ready to grow and good to go. Normally here we don't get started till around beginning of May, late April, so that was definitely strange. But then it did get cold again after I did that first initial mow, and then there was a bit of a lull there where everything kind of got stunted and didn't really grow as much, and I was kind of mowing but not really taking off much, and then everything did finally get going. But the spring was very long, very cold, and very wet, and water is a trend for 2024 here in southern Ontario, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But I did push a little bit of granular fert on the entire lawn this year, just because, as I mentioned, with that kind of long, cold spring and a lot of water, I was really having a trouble getting the lawn to respond and getting it going in the spring. So in order to kind of get it going a little bit sooner, I did push, I think I put down about 1.5 pounds of nitrogen in one app in the spring there, just to get everything kind of pumping and going. And then we converted the front onto the liquid program for the rest of the year. We started with 2 applications of the TNT starter, and then switched over to the balance line for the rest of the string. Balance line straight line together with the wetting agent, as well as the organohume. And we'll get into this a teeny bit later, but the liquid program in the front lawn this year really surprised me. It's not a big push for growth, which is good, because in the spring, especially when it's so wet and the lawn is growing so fast, you almost don't want to be pushing more growth because you can barely keep up with mowing as it is. So it's very good for making the lawn dense and healthy without having a whole bunch of extra growth that you're constantly fighting and cutting off. And density was another big thing I noticed. The organohume and the micros in the starter fertilizer and in the balance line and even in the straight line together are helped really, over the last 3 years I've been using these products, are really making a good baseline in the soil, so that we have lots of micros going on there, lots of those nutrients that really help make the lawn thrive. And how thick and lush the front lawn was this year was amazing, even considering that I did a aeration and overseed in the spring and in the fall. But it was very thick, very healthy compared to the back lawn that was just getting pushed with that traditional fertilizer. There was less thatch because I wasn't cutting off as much. It was thick, it was healthy, it had great color, because the color response on that straight line is amazing. And I've also been overseeding it slowly with some of our GrowForge's Elite Turfgrass blend, and the color response on that blend is really great as well. So I've been really seeing some success with that. And the lawn did get some damage last year. Those of you who've been around for a while, some landscaping done in the front lawn, and there was some excavators and stuff that drove across the front lawn. So it did get some damage, but it recovered perfectly fine, even with the liquid spoon feeding program. But yeah, like I've heard a lot of people used my liquid program, and I've commented, or sent me emails saying, well, I've put it down and I'm not seeing anything different. Unlike regular granular fertilizer, you're not going to see instant results with liquid fertilizer. It's a result over time. It's just you're putting down, a fraction of the nutrients you would put down with regular granular fertilizer. You're putting down an eighth of of one application, but you're going to put that application down 8 times, equal full application. So over the span of about 2 months, you'll start to notice a difference. But don't expect that you're going to put one application down and everything's just going to go mad. That's not how this works. That's not how granular fertilizers work. It's a period over time that you're really going to see these results coming out from this lawn. So definitely, we're pushing it with the granular and the liquid fertilizer. I did my standard granular application about late April, and then I did my second one Victoria Day weekend, which is about mid-May, Memorial Day weekend for those of you in the States. But we did have quite a bit of washout this spring with the amount of rain we had. Because we had so much rain, everything was just moving through the soil very fast, and the rain does wash out the nutrients in the soil, and the grass is growing like crazy. So I did have to do a little bit more fert than I wanted to in the spring, just to keep some semblance of color in the grass, because I found the color was starting to get that really kind of limey green. When all the fertilizers watch all the nutrients is out of the soil, the grass is growing so much because of all the rain, and it's not really, if I put a growth regulator on it, probably would have had a better color on it. But yeah, that was the big issue with this spring. And then the temps were cold for a period of time, which kind of stunted everything. Like we were in that 10-12 degree range until about mid-June. So it was quite a cold spring as compared to normal. But the color that we always get in May is always amazing. As our friend Ryan DeMay always says, if you pick any grass type, it will grow amazing for 4 months out of the year. And definitely where I am located, that May-June range for cool season grass is really just, it's its prime season. The color is just amazing. It always looks amazing. As well as that September-October range for cool season in my area. But September-October, it's a little different look. But that May, the grass in May is always, the texture is great. It's nice and thick. You haven't dealt with any of that drought stress yet. It's still raining quite a bit. It's always really good. So definitely moving into the summer, I started switching the entire lawn onto liquid. So I treated every 2 weeks the front, back, and side lawn with liquid fertilizers. Now, the side lawn kind of got a different treatment, and we're going to get into that later when we talk about the test plots. But the liquid in the summer really, really helped with growth. I found that every time before, when I would try to push lightly with granular in the summer, the grass would always look kind of, it would kind of respond, but they wouldn't have enough energy because it would be too warm and too stressed already. And I never recommend anybody pushing growth at a time of stress. The lawn always kind of stalled a bit, and then it kind of dried out a bit because it was really pulling for carbohydrates to get the plant growing. So I never was happy. So I just stopped pushing fertilizer pretty much from end of May all the way to the end of August. But I always found year after year that by the time the beginning of August rolled around, the lawn was really struggling color wise. It had been growing throughout the winter, or throughout the summer, sorry, because it had been irrigated, but for that lack of nutrients really was causing it to slow down and lose that nice color. So these spoon feeding products, again, you're building a perfect base in your soil. You're building great micronutrients in the soil. You're creating a nice ecosystem for that grass to grow, and you're basically just setting it up to thrive, making sure that, because everything is all about what's in the soil, right? It doesn't matter what you're putting down, how you're cutting, what the plant is like. If your soil sucks and you're trying to plant grass, even if it's perfect weather conditions outside, the grass still won't grow. So definitely with these liquid programs, I've been slowly kind of transforming my soil into a better growth soil for the grass. And for those of you who don't, in my area, I have very sandy soil, or almost silica sand. So it is good in the sense that I don't get a lot of pooling or puddling or dampness. My soil drains very well. But in the summer, when it's very dry, or when I'm putting down fertilizer, it drains a little too well sometimes, and it flushes things through the soil. So I do have to be a little more on top of my irrigation and fertilizer strategy because of that. And talking about irrigation strategy, I did switch the lawn to a different irrigation strategy this summer. Not that I really needed it, but it did work as well. So I had kind of been reading quite a bit about irrigation strategies, and I'd been struggling. I've been doing my lawn in deep watering. So I was watering a 1/2 inch every 3 days. So every third morning, the irrigation system will put down a 1/2 inch. But I did definitely find that the lawn would kind of respond on day 1 from that irrigation. Day 2, it would still be quite damp. And by the time we had reached to day 3, before the watering happened that night, the lawn would be quite dried out. And it was almost kind of flipping it in and out of dormancy a lot, which is not good. Causes thinning and can cause the crown to die. It's better for the lawn to either go into dormancy or stay out of dormancy, not a back and forth. So what I did was I switched it to a little bit of a less water. So I'm putting down about a 1/4 inch now, but I'm putting it down every other day. So the lawn doesn't really get an opportunity to dry out. And I think if I did have a soil that was a little bit more dense, a little bit more clay-like, I would be able to irrigate every third day. But I think because my soil is so easily drainable, because it's sand and it drains so easy, unfortunately, I have to kind of put water down more frequently to hold that water in the soil, because the water just flows right through the soil and is gone. It doesn't sit, it just drains. So that's kind of another thing I did this year. I switched to that program, and that seems to be working quite a bit better. Now, for the impact, or the areas that are manually irrigated, like the side lawn and the front lawn, those are still on an every 3-day program. I normally put down about 3/4 inch with that sprinkler based on what I've estimated, and I find that the way that sprinkler puts down the water, it seems to work in those spaces. And both of those spaces, too, the front lawn and the side lawn, are dappled sun, so they don't get full sun like the backyard does, so they don't dry out as fast, which is nice. So I think that's another reason why I kind of get away with a little bit less over there. But that's another thing. As you learn your lawn, as you learn your space that you're taking care of, you'll learn that certain areas of lawn may need more than others. In fact, I do know that there are areas in the back that my in-ground system misses. There's actually 2 dry spots that form quite regularly. So I normally just have to get out there with a hose and do some supplemental irrigation on those really dry stretches in the summer. This summer, I think I only had to do it twice. But you will learn, the spots that your system misses, or the spots that, I don't know, maybe there was an old tree there and the soil quality is different in that area, or maybe when they built the house, they dumped a whole bunch of brick offcuts or something buried under the ground there, and it gets very hot. There's reasons for everything, and your soil is not consistent throughout your entire property. So don't expect that, because I have clay here or because I have gravelly soil here, it's going to be like that the rest of your property. It's always good to kind of check in multiple places and see how everything is looking. So that's something to keep in mind when we're talking about soil in your property and your irrigation strategy and your lawn strategy, because in the end, soil is what drives the boat. How your soil is going, how much nutrients you have in your soil, what type of soil you have. Again, as I said, you got perfect conditions, you're watering, you're fertilizing, but if your soil is garbage, you will not be able to grow turf grass. And that's unfortunately just the way it is. So after my little soil rant there, heading into the summer, we had the wettest summer on record here in the GTA. I believe between the months of June, July, and August, we had over 400 mil of rain. But we had 2 separate days in July and August where we got over 100 mil of rain in the span of like 4 or 5 hours. So we had a very, very wet summer, which was good. My irrigation system pretty much barely ran all summer. But at the same time, again, keeping up with mowing was very difficult. Being able to put down my liquids and not run into rain was also very difficult. And the weed pressure was high. And I think that was just because of the amount of rain we were receiving. There's always weed pressure. But when it's drier in the summer, the weed pressure kind of subsides a little bit. But when it's wet all summer long, that weed pressure is going to stay heavy all long. And if you start to lose it a bit on vacation or something in the summer, it's going to start pushing its way in. That's just the way it is. So, granular. So kind of looking back at the entire year, a couple things I really liked about the way I did my program this year. I loved doing the granular in the spring. I still think I'm going to keep on that. Last year I just did liquid in the front lawn in the spring. Just all spring, just one granular application, even in those liquid areas. I think kind of in our area, because our winters are so long, it's good to push a little bit of growth in the spring to kind of get things going. I mean, if you're a little bit more patient and you're willing to wait for things to kind of kick in, you're more than welcome to. But, I want to get out there in the lawn, and our season is so short. I would rather make sure that I can do something to kind of push a little bit in the spring. So definitely, I think that granular in the spring is a really good idea. Even just a small application. If you're planning on doing liquids for the rest of the year, a little bit of granular in the fall, a little bit of granular in the spring. That's a great idea there. So I was really happy with that. Overseeding in the spring. I did do a small overseed project in the spring. I aerated and overseeded. This is because I didn't do it in the fall the year before, just because time got away from me. But I found some success with this. I definitely found that the grass seed coming in took a lot longer than it normally does in the fall. I think that's just because the soil temps were colder than they normally are in the fall, and everything's still kind of getting going. So, but I did like the success of this. I found it worked quite well. I think I might do the same thing this year. Even if I don't overseed, I might just put do an aeration. As I said, with the sandy soil, I have found that with the sandy soil and the riding mower, the compaction problems are crazy. With kind of the shape of my lawn, there's only so many ways you can vary your patterns, but even in the end, when you do that first trim pass around the outside, you're always in the same area. And those riding mowers are heavy, and they can create a number on things over a period of time. So, and I do have quite a bit of shade on the edges of my property on both sides, so that doesn't help either. So yeah, I really liked doing that aeration in the spring. I found that made a big difference. And I think we're going to continue to do that in the 2024 season. So, I mean, again, aeration always helps. You're opening up that soil. You're allowing the nutrients that you're putting down, whether it being liquid or granular, to drive deeper into the soil. You're allowing the water to drive deeper in the soil. You're airing out that soil. There's a reason why hay farmers and corn farmers every year, they till that soil, they turn it over. It's because you're making a nice, fluffy soil, great root base to plant the new crop into, as well as you're opening up that soil. Things need oxygen to decompose. Oxygen is a part of the decomposition process. If it's buried in the soil, it doesn't decompose as fast. So you're allowing oxygen to get in that soil. You're allowing that organic matter to move, to do its thing, to create a great, healthy, organic soil that's going to keep your lawn healthy for a long time. So I'm a big proponent of aeration. I think it's very important. I don't think you can do it too much. So twice a year, I definitely think if you have a riding mower is the way to go. If you can't afford to do it twice a year, once a year is gonna do a good job. And if you're doing it once a year, I'll probably suggest to do it in the fall. But the spring I didn't think hurt. The one thing I didn't like about doing it in the spring was I did find that it took longer for it to heal, for all the cores to kind of break down and the grass to heal back over. Again, I think that's just because it's colder. The grass isn't as well established yet. So it's still slowly growing, so everything's a little slower. I did it pretty early in the spring. I think it was the second week of May or third week of May or something like that. It was quite early, but I didn't see a problem with how it worked. So I was happy with that. But yeah, definitely, I would say that if you have a thin lawn and you're willing to manage your expectations and you want to put some work in the spring to see if you can get it growing, and aeration and overseed in the spring is not a horrible idea, as long as you know that when the summer comes, you got to keep on top of your watering or put a little bit extra effort in, or you might lose a percentage of what you seeded in the spring. But I wouldn't say that aerating and overseeding in the spring is a horrible idea if you really want to do it. So I wanted to test that for myself because it's something I hadn't done in quite a few years. You're always taking a gamble. It seems like, especially in more recent years, we don't really have much of a spring anymore. It seems like we kind of jump straight into summer most of the time. This year we were lucky and we had a quite prolonged period of cooler temperatures with moisture. So I got lucky that my overseeding worked, but I could see in a different scenario in a different year, if it kind of got really hot really quickly, that you could have some issues with overseeding in the spring. So that would be my opinion on that and how that went this year. This summer we had way too much water. That's the bottom line. Too much water, fighting fungus, fighting excess grass clippings, the things that come with too much water. But it wasn't necessarily a horrible thing. We had kind of 2 consecutive years of prolonged dry period, so the water this year was more than welcomed to kind of relieve some of our drought conditions we have. I'm sure the farmers love it. You should have seen the corn around here, 14 feet tall, massive corn. Great year for corn. But yeah, that's kind of the way that works. This year, I tried to kind of put an emphasis on checking out different wetting agents from GrowForge, organic and synthetic wetting agents. I found more success with the synthetic ones but I'm not going to say that I didn't find success with the organic ones. The TPA I found has probably reduced my watering by at least 30%. Especially in the front lawn and the more well-established turf and the turf where I put it down a lot more often. It does help. And I'm not going to tell anybody not to do it. I would say if you have the means and you're more than happy to do it, definitely do it. In the last 2 years, I've been putting down these wetting agents. I have seen quite a bit of a difference. Now, just like the Hydrotain in the United States or any of these products, they're not miracle workers. You can't put down a wetting agent and just not water your lawn all summer. That's not how it works. Even the Dawn dish soap trick, that's not how it works. It helps basically trap moisture out of the humidity in the air and out of the water you're putting it down, and making it more readily available so that your plant can access it. Your plant is still going to sweat water when it is warm through transpiration. There is still going to be evaporation through the soil when it is warm. Those ET rates are not going to change because of your wetting agent. It is basically making it so your plant uses the water in a more resourceful and in a more sustainable way. But again, in a long, sustained period of drought, a wetting agent can only do so much. You're going to have to start adding with supplemental watering. But as we all know, supplemental watering is never as good as Mother Nature, but I would say supplemental watering combined with a wetting agent gives you a higher chance of success of having that green and healthy lawn. So if you're someone who's always struggled with a dry lawn, I would maybe suggest giving a wetting agent a try. And if you're someone who has a hard lawn with clay or anything like that, I would suggest give a wetting agent and maybe a liquid aeration product or an organohumus a try. See if you can break up that hard, dense soil and allow your nutrients and water to penetrate a little better, get deeper into the soil, because in the end, we all want deep and healthy roots. That's the best way we're going to get a long and lasting lawn. Kind of moving into the fall of 2024, it was quite dry, quite a bit of a change from the summer. I remember saying to some of the guys at work that I had run my irrigation system more in the month of September and October than I had run it all year long. We got pretty much no rain in September. I think we had 20 mil of rain in the entire month of September, which was a big change for us considering we had 100 mil every month prior. So that was a bit of a change. Fall is always kind of a season where normally there's quite a bit of help from Mother Nature. You can kind of let off on the watering a little bit. But I kind of had to keep training myself to get out there and start with the watering, stay on top of things. Fall is kind of a windier time, and as we all know, the wind acts like a big fan, and it does pull moisture out of the soil. So that was something fighting in the fall, as well as raking and other things like that. But it was quite a dry fall, I would say. Not a lot of rain, which was definitely a bit more difficult because I had to make sure that we were watering on some sort of schedule so that I could get the fertilizer down, get everything breaking up, get my last couple winterizer applications down. I did put 3 applications down this fall with about a half a pound each of nitrogen to help get the lawn as best prepared for spring as I possibly could. I was very happy with all those applications. But again, with the lack of rainfall from Mother Nature, I kind of had to plan the applications around a smaller rainfall and then use the irrigation system to kind of supplement those applications. So that was a little more difficult. Fertilizer always breaks down better with Mother Nature's rain than your own supplemental irrigation. But that's just kind of the way it is when it's dry like that in the fall. So the lawn was put to bed in quite a happy state. I was pretty happy with the color and everything when everything went to bed there at the end of October. We had quite a bit of rain in November. It was a wet month as well as December. Yeah, all in all, 2024 lawn season was pretty successful. I'm pretty happy with how the front lawn was actually, I'm really happy with the way the front lawn has reached a new level of perfection. That's kind of my main stage. That's the thing I put the most attention into keeping looking good. The back lawn is definitely making big strides. In the last 2 or 3 years, I would say it's starting to get to a point now where it's almost as sustainable as the front lawn is, which I'm really good with. And I'm really happy with the success of my spoon feeding program that I kind of created with the granular, as well as my fertilizer program. I'm slowly refining it. We're going to be releasing some videos this spring with the full details of the program, with recommendations and what to put down and when, which I'm also really excited for. But those videos will be coming out soon. But without further ado, I think it's time to move on to the test plots, talk about how those went and what the plans are for those. All right, so for those of you who don't know, I had 5 test plots, that I actually planted this year in my side lawn. So longtime viewers of the channel have known the side lawn's kind of a problem area. It gets pretty dense shade, a lot of traffic, and there is a big walnut tree in the side there that causes hectic problems with the soil. Those of you know, when walnut trees drop their leaves, they have quite a bit of an odor. You can actually smell it on your hands as well as the walnut. It's to mess with the pH of the soil underneath the tree, to kill anything that grows underneath the tree, so that the tree can basically preserve itself and doesn't have to compete with anything. If you want to grow anything under a walnut tree, it has to have a lot of acidic, likes to like acidic soil. But anyways, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. If you want to look that up, go right ahead. But that's kind of how walnut trees work, and that's another problem I have in this side lawn. So I tilled up everything that we had, loosened the compaction in that entire side, tilled about the top 6 inches, re-leveled everything, and I seeded 2 bluegrass test plots, 2 fescue test plots, and the GrowForge Elise turf grass mix, which is bluegrass, fescue, and rye. I did this seeding project it was on Victoria Day weekend or Memorial Day weekend, about last week of May. I believe it was the 25th of May, actually, that everything was planted. And everything came in really well, actually. I was really impressed. Of course, we had 2 of those big torrential rainfalls right after I put the seed down, so it washed out pretty much the whole elite turf grass plot, and I had to do a little bit of supplemental seeding in there to fill in some of the bare areas that it had washed away. But that plot I was the most impressed with. That GrowForge Elite turf grass blend is a great blend. The color on that plot with minimal fertilizer is amazing. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I was pushing these areas with fertilizer. I put down about 3 applications of starter fertilizer about 3 weeks apart, leading up to one at the time of seeding, 1 2 weeks after that, and 1 more 2 weeks after that. All these plots were treated weekly with the GrowForge TPA starter fertilizer, as well as organohuman, a wetting agent. And then I did put down another granular application in August, as well as I aerated the whole thing, and I overseeded the 3 of the plots in their seed. And the drought tolerance on that GrowForge Elite turfgrass plot too is great. And the warm, dry weather in the fall, that plot didn't waver. It held the color. I never really saw it. I saw it wilt a bit in the sun. I would get water on it and it would bounce right back. I never really saw it going brown, unlike the fescue plots. Those 2 fescue plots didn't fare too well in that dry spell in the summer. They really kind of pulled back, and the walnut tree didn't help either. Those are the 2 plots planted under the walnut tree, so they kind of suffered that way. So what I'm kind of planning with those, I was really happy though with the fescue plots. They came in really, really well and really quickly. So what I would kind of recommend with those 2 fescue grass types, I would say if you're a contractor or you're someone who's looking for some quick grass that's going to come up really quick, or you're someone who lives in an area that has a lot of sun and not a lot of shade, these fescue plots are going to be great for you. These fescue blends, the Santama and the Garnet creeping red fescue are going to be amazing for you. Put these down, they'll come up real quick, they'll come up thick and healthy. As long as you stay on top of the water with them, you're not going to have a problem. If you're someone who has dappled shade or partial shade with these grass blends, they don't really like to stand up if there's not enough sun. They tend to kind of lay over, and after a while that laying over problem turns into kind of a matting over problem, and then they kind of suffocate themselves out. At least that was my experience with them in an area that had quite dense shade. They also don't respond to heat amazingly either, but that's kind of the way fescue normally is. If you're someone who's into that thinner type of grass, that could be a perfect blend for you. It's not a problem with the grass, it's a problem with what you in particular like. And me personally, I liked the bluegrass plots better. The other two bluegrass plots, the SR 2100 and the what was the other one called? I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll have to look it up, but I'll put it in the description below. But those other two bluegrass plots turned out very, very well. They do take forever to come in. I would say in about the first week, the Santama was up. Second week, the Santama and the Garnet was up, as well as the Growforge Elite Turfgrass blend was starting to come up. I would say it was about week 3 into week 4 that these bluegrass blends finally started coming up. But once they did come up and they started to settle in, by the time the fall rolled around, these blends were looking great. Thick, healthy, color response was great. Every time you put down a little bit of fertilizer, a little bit of to try to boost some color, they would pop back right away, looking really good. And traffic was really good as well. In the fall, when we're taking all the leaves out of the backyard and bringing them up to the front to the curb so the garbage truck can take them away, there's a lot of back and forth on that side lawn. The bluegrass and the Elite Turfgrass blend, I was very impressed with how they dealt with the traffic, considering I had a bluegrass fescue blend before in that area and it did not deal with the traffic very well. This Elite Turfgrass blend dealt with that traffic quite well as the bluegrass plots did. It's a bit of a more hardier grass. The fescue, by the other hand, because it's so long and so wispy, it tended to kind of lay over a bit. So my plan, now that I have these plots all in and settled, we're going to go through another year with them. We're going to overseed them all this spring. We're going to continue the fertilizer on them, and we're going to see, again, how they progress. It does take about a full year, 365 days, for turfgrass to become fully established. For bluegrass, it can take up to 2 years for it to become fully established. So I want to make sure that I'm giving these plots a full chance to perform. As I mentioned, we didn't really have a lot of drought stress this summer because of the amount of rain we got, so I haven't really seen how these have really been tested in the dry weather. So definitely going to be looking in to see how they respond that way. But all in all, really impressed with the Growforge Elite Turfgrass blend. Would recommend anybody who's looking for a high quality Canadian sourced grass seed to go ahead and pick that one up. You can use code GGN23 to get 5% off at checkout, as well as supporting the channel as well. So without further ado, let's head into what my plans are for 2025. So as I've mentioned, I do have some plans with the test plots. We're going to be sticking with those plots for the 2025 season. We're going to be continuing to seed them and try to get them to grow, seeing if we can kind of build off of what we started in 2024 and get them to establish healthy and healthy turf grass there, and see test them with drought tolerance, test them with different fertilizers, see how well they respond to color. We're going to give them a full another year and see how they do. So that's kind of one thing I'm looking forward to in 2025. Another thing I'm looking forward to in 2025 is continuing pushing these the liquid fertilizers, trying to see what I can do with them, try to see if there's different combinations I can do to see if I can get the best response out of these fertilizers that I'm going to use. The first year I kind of used them. I didn't use them very routinely. Last year was even better, and then this year was even better. I was pretty much on a 2-week schedule with them, and I'm really happy with how things turned out this year. So I'm going to kind of continue to pluck away at that, see how well I can get that scheduled up there. Continue my compaction reduction work. One thing I didn't really talk about in my 2024 recap was compaction. I did kind of touch on it there, but I did a compaction test this year. My entire front lawn, I only cut with my Toro Time Master. I didn't even touch it with my John Deere X300 lawnmower. And I really noticed a big difference just in how the grass stood up throughout the year, how the grass responded to drought, how the grass responded to any sort of other stress, because it already wasn't stressed with the weight of the lawnmower. And I did actually start to switch the back lawn onto like a 50-50 program. So it was 50-50 cut with the riding mower and the walk behind. Really, technically, most of the time I would cut it with the walk behind as long as I had the time. And if I didn't have the time, like if it was a weeknight mow in the summer, I would get the riding mower out and go ahead and mow the back lawn that way. So I definitely want to continue this compaction reduction work. I think it's making a big difference, and I want to see how much I can do to continue this testing. And we'll keep you updated on how that works, but I'm definitely really excited about that. And maybe a new lawnmower as well. I have something in the works to be getting another lawnmower. We're going to be testing out, making some videos on, seeing how that works. It is a ride-on, and something we haven't seen on the channel in before. And it is red, so very excited about that. Leave a comment down below if you have a guess on what lawnmower is going to be coming up. And a Time Master review is coming up very soon as well. I know I promised 2 years ago when I bought that lawnmower that we would be getting a full review of the Time Master, and I'm finally ready, I think, now to give a pretty in-depth review about what I think of it, how I like it, how it performs, and everything like that. So that's going to be coming up very soon as well. So without further ado, I think it's time to move on to the last part of the podcast, successes and failures. So let's go there. Looking back at 2024 and this entire retrospective episode, I guess you could call it, successes and failures. What were the successes and failures of 2025? I would say my biggest success of 2025 was staying on top of the fertilizer, the liquid fertilizers. Not falling behind on that. That 2-week regimen, I pretty much got right into that. I stayed on top of that. And the color and the health of the lawn that we saw from that spoon feeding program speaks for itself. And I would say that's a big success of 2025, as well as the test plots. And that's to thank you guys for that. I've always wanted to do something kind of like that. And GrowForge stepped in and gracefully donated all of the products for that testing, as well as you guys supporting the channel allowed GrowForge to donate all those products, which then allowed this project to happen. So it wouldn't be possible without you guys, and that's a big success in my mind for the 2025 lawn season. Failures, there was a fertilizer application done in, I think it was almost October, one of the last ones of the year. And the bag of fertilizer I got, it's actually kind of a funny story. So people always talk about burning lawns, and how do you burn a lawn and all this stuff. The bag of fertilizer I got from Canadian Tire, and for those who don't know, Canadian Tire is kind of like a department store for people in the United States. It was near the end of the year. I was looking for an all-purpose fertilizer. I just went and picked up a regular 16-16-16. It was Canadian Tire's in-house brand, whatever it was. It's fine. But the bag of fertilizer had been stored outside, actually, for most of the winter, and I was a little leery about it because when I first picked it up, my hands were all sticky from the nitrogen leaking out of the bag. But I figured, it can't be that bad. I mean, they clearly probably know what they're doing if they're storing it outside. So I picked a bag kind of from the bottom of the pallet. Figured it seemed like it was at least wet out of all of them. Most of the fertilizer out of most of the stores was not really in stock anymore, and I thought I had enough to get me through the fall, but I didn't, so I had to go pick up this extra bag. Not a huge deal, but again, something that needed to be done. When I went to go put down this bag, all these clumps started forming because the fertilizer was so wet and sticky. It wasn't feeding out of the spreader properly. I didn't burn the lawn, I didn't stripe the lawn, but it was definitely a painful process, and I really don't think I got the best application down then. The spreader wasn't feeding properly, there was all these weird things going on, and I wasn't super happy with that application. But that, that's the way it goes. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't go well. And that's kind of, stuff that we always do. Even someone like me who's done, God knows how many granular fertilizer applications, we all still have a little bit of problems. We all still have burning. We all still have striping. It happens to the best of us. And, that's kind of the way it is. I did also, another funny story from this year. One day in the spring, I was rushing to get down some fertilizer before it got dark, because it was supposed to rain the following day, and I wanted to make sure I got it down before the rain. And I was holding the fertilizer bag between my legs, standing up, and I got an X-Acto knife to cut the bag open before I was going to dump it in the spreader. And the X-Acto knife slipped off the bag and went right into the side of my leg. I got a gash in the side of my knee that was probably about 1.5 inches long. Thought I was going to need stitches, bled quite a bit, and I still got a pretty nasty scar from that one. So definitely, that was another case of just rushing, but that's a good story from 2025. At the beginning of the season, putting down some fertilizer there. But everything happens to the best of us. There's no reason to fret making mistakes. The greatest thing about lawn care, and one of the reasons why I love it so much, it is measurable. You can see a difference. You do something and you see a difference right away, which is amazing. The other thing is, grass is cheap. Go get it at the store, put it back down, and everything will grow. If you make a mistake, you cut your lawn too short, you accidentally scalp an area, grass is cheap. Go get a bag of grass seed from the store, put it down, it will grow. In about a couple of weeks, you'll be back to where you were, and you can keep going. There's no need to be petrified that if you make a mistake, it is the end of the world. Everything's repairable, everything's fixable. That's the great thing about lawn care, as well as you can see results, you put the effort in, and the results will show for themselves. So from the Great Green North, my name is Wade Murray. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Great Green North podcast. For those of you who are on YouTube, you can also get this podcast on Spotify as well as on Apple Podcasts. And for those of you on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, there is a video component to this podcast, as well as a YouTube channel, Great Green North Lawn Care. Hit subscribe. Lots of great videos coming up here in the 2025 lawn season. If you have any other lawn questions, you can always reach them out through my website, greatgreennorthlawncare.ca, or you can reach out through my email, greatgreennorthlawncare@gmail.com. And as always, thank you guys for listening and watching. And for the Great Green North, my name is Wade Murray. Keep it green.